Have you ever wondered what ancient Torah commentaries, nostalgic 1990s Israeli teen dramas, the animated sitcom Bob's Burgers, and deep psychoanalytic theory all have in common? I know, it sounds like an absolutely wild mix, right? Well, welcome to this explainer. Today, we're going to trace a really fascinating thread between all of these, exploring the profound concepts of time, memory, and the incredible, sometimes terrifying power of just letting go. Okay, let's dive right into this. Here's our roadmap for today. We'll be moving from a matter of time into psychoanalysis, then through the habit of giving to measuring memory, repairing the human soul, and finally wrapping up with time, space, and soul.
Section 1. A matter of time, looking at Shemitah beyond just agriculture.
You know, when most people hear the word Shemitah, the biblical sabbatical year, they immediately think of farming rules, letting the land rest, dropping your tools, that whole thing. But our source material today actually challenges us to look at Shemitah totally differently, as a sweeping temporal phenomenon. Look at the perspective of the 12th century commentator, the Rashbam. When he examines Deuteronomy 15, which says, "For a remission to the Lord has been proclaimed," Rashbam points out that this specific language is exactly what's used to proclaim a fast or a holy convocation. It's literally language denoting time. So he's arguing that Shemitah is fundamentally an ontological decision about time itself. It's a designated era that forces us to actively relinquish our grip, to remit our debts, and to just let go, regardless of where we physically happen to be standing. Actually, to really grasp this ancient biblical concept, it helps to look at 1990s pop culture. If you grew up with the iconic Israeli high school drama Inyan Shel Zaman, which literally translates to A Matter of Time, you definitely remember the lovable slacker character Weitzman. He was obsessed with rock bands. And then there was that deeply nostalgic theme song crooning, "Take it slow, take your time, the world will wait outside." That shared cultural decision to just hit pause, to let the world wait outside for a minute while we figure things out, that is a universal, everyday echo of the exact same temporal letting go that Shemitah is demanding of us.
Moving on to Section 2, psychoanalysis and letting go, or the clinical space of memory.
So how did time and memory actually manifest in the clinical space of therapy? Well, as it turns out, on the therapist's couch, people almost always end up talking about exactly what they absolutely didn't intend to. There's this brilliant moment in the Israeli television show Bitapul, which you might know from his U.S. adaptation In Treatment. In it, the tough, skeptical Holocaust survivor father of a fighter pilot comes in for a consultation. He gets super agitated with the therapist and asks this really vivid, probing question. Why on earth should a person open up the black box of their consciousness while they're up in the sky at Mach 5 and pulling 80 Gs? It's the perfect metaphor. When our lives are moving at breakneck speed, the idea of exploring the mind's hidden spaces feels terrifying. It feels completely dangerous. And what exactly are we so afraid of finding in that mental black box? Oddly enough, the animated series Bob's Burgers hits the nail on the head here. There's an episode where mischievous little Louise falls into this crazy fever dream. In her mind, her favorite toys, which basically represent her internalized family objects, warn her away from a specific psychological space. They tell her, "Don't go to the fortress, it's gross there." But of course, she goes anyway. And what she realizes is that she has constructed this massive, impenetrable defensive fortress in her own mind, and she finally needs to tear it down. The takeaway here is absolutely crucial. Not everything in our mental black box needs to be opened, and not everything needs to be remembered forever. We build these internal fortresses for a reason, right? To protect ourselves, but they shouldn't remain in a position of power permanently. Healthy psychology requires that we sometimes do exactly what Shemitah asks of us. We must remit. We have to intentionally let go, destroy our outdated defenses, and move forward. Section 3. The habit of giving and hacking the ego. So how do we practically achieve this letting go? We do it through the physical act of giving. Deuteronomy 15 commands us to give generously to those in need, and to do it without our hearts grieving over the loss of our wealth. But let's be real, human nature and our fragile egos make that incredibly difficult. And this is where the 16th century Kabbalist, the Holy Alshik, steps in. He offers essentially 5 psychological hacks for tricking our own ego into giving joyfully. First, the ego loves money, right? So we bribe it. The Torah promises that giving actually brings greater heavenly blessing, which kind of drops the ego's defenses. Next, we use the power of habit. The Torah uses a double verb for giving, teaching us to do it repeatedly until it's just second nature. Then there's the Wheel of Fortune approach, using our own self-interest, knowing that what goes around comes around. Then there's the physician parable, where we realize God acts as a master doctor, customizing wealth and poverty as specific spiritual remedies for different souls. And finally, the poor person's deposit. This is the realization that your extra wealth isn't even yours at all. It's literally just a trust fund you're holding on to for the poor. When you put all of the Alshik's strategies together, it's like a giant puzzle. Shemitah isn't just about remitting farmland. It's about a total remission of the ego. What we consciously choose to forget and let go of makes space for giving. It brings balance to the world, reminding us that the things we cling to so tightly aren't truly ours to begin with.
All right, Section 4, Measuring Memory and Tradition, looking at the Talmudic ratios.
We can actually see how we measure our memory and traditions by looking at a daily page of the Talmud, specifically Chulin 98. There is a deep, fascinating mathematical debate over how a forbidden substance is nullified in a mixture, and this brilliantly illustrates our point about perspective. The debate is over two traditional ratios. Is a forbidden substance nullified if it's 1 part in 60 or 1 part in 100? The Talmud reconciles this by asking, what are you actually measuring? The 1 in 60 camp measures the meat and the bones together. The 1 in 100 camp measures only the meat. Both traditions are valid. They just reflect a completely different scope of measurement. So, how we measure our traditions literally dictates what gets preserved and what we allow to be nullified and forgotten.
Section 5, Repairing the Human Soul, Fracture and Generalization.
Because, look, letting go and remembering aren't just technical or intellectual exercises. They are the actual tools we use to fix the world. The Alter Rebbe, in the foundational text of the Tanya, offers this profound insight. He writes that the beauty of Jacob was of the dimension of Adam, because Jacob rectified Adam's original fracture. Jacob's soul was comprehensive. It encompassed all souls. What he's saying is that while we absolutely have the ability to fracture and break things, we also have this comprehensive capacity to repair. We can step back, generalize the whole picture, and actively choose to fix it.
Which brings us to our final stop, Section 6, Time, Space, and Soul.
This is the grand synthesis. The Hasidic master, the Mei HaShaloach, highlights an incredibly profound idea. When discussing the eating of tithes, he writes that from these actions, awe enters a person's heart. Why? Because, as he says, a person's mind is settled when in his own place. To have a settled mind, to truly experience awe without division or anxiety, you need a place. You need makom. But here's the catch. He is not talking about physical geography. Space, in this spiritual sense, is something you have to actively generate. Think about it like a physics equation. Velocity is a function of length and time. In our lives, time and man interact to literally create space. Through our actions within time, through those habits of giving, the intentional pauses of Shemitah, and letting go of our own ego, we actively carve out our own spiritual space. That is how we finally settle our minds. So as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a provocative question to chew on. Based on everything we've just uncovered, from the Rushbaum to Bob's Burgers, from the Alshik to the Tanya, ask yourself, what traditions and memories do you truly need to measure and remember? And maybe more importantly, what fever dream fortress built up in your own mind do you finally need to remit and let go of today? Carve out your space. Settle your mind. Thanks so much for joining us.